I've been sitting on this for a while because, quite frankly, I didn't have anything nice to say. And I don't like talking about watches that I don't have any hands-on experience with. But I don't want to have any hands-on experience with this overpriced, hyped up piece of garbage. I thought I would just let it pass, because my channel's small and who really cares what I think about this? But it's been a few weeks and I'm still annoyed. This whole MoonSwatch debacle is a big problem for me. Most of the people in this space on YouTube have been relatively supportive or even enthusiastic about this release. I am not one of those people. As a proud Omega owner who spent nearly $5,000 on her watch, I'm less than thrilled that Swatch has decided to use the proud name and heritage of a quality brand like Omega in order to sell overpriced, hyped up, quartz-powered plastic pieces of garbage to pump up the parent brand. Because this is what has happened, and I'm not here to polish this turd. Exactly how is this good for Omega? Does anyone really believe that after spending $260 on a crappy watch that bleeds color on your wrist, that somehow all these young people are going to be more attracted to the Omega brand? Or is this just good for Swatch? Because to be clear, these watches are sold in select Swatch stores, where consumers will see other swatches, like the Systems 51 or whatever, and maybe they might purchase something like that someday. But I doubt too many people are gonna buy this abomination and then think, hey, what I really need to do now is buy a $7,000 version of the same watch I just bought. I don't think so. Omega is a brand with cachet. Swatch makes fun, accessible accessories. You're welcome for the alliteration. This is the equivalent to Timex owning Rolex and making some crappy $250 Submariner clone with the word Rolex prominently displayed on the strap and the dial. Sure, the world is littered with people who would jump at the chance to buy a Timex, Rolex, quartz-powered plastic sub. But how on earth would that be good for Rolex? Seriously, you cannot blame me for being upset that Swatch has gone out of their way to cheapen and tarnish the Omega brand name without acknowledging the fact that the Omega branding on the dial and strap are the primary driver of sales to people who otherwise don't give a crap about watches. This is basically monetizing the brand, which is always at the expense of the brand. Back in the 40s through the 80s, Coach was a premium brand of women's handbags. You couldn't buy a Coach bag under full retail. They would rather buy back their merchandise than sell it at a discount. Eventually, Coach was sold to a larger company who wound up monetizing the brand, which is basically cashing in on all of the cachet that was earned from decades of high-quality offerings. They did this by shipping their manufacturing overseas, opening outlets, drastically lowering their quality, and in the long run, ruining the brand. Don't get me wrong, they made a ton of money, which I guess is the point. But as a consumer, I can't get a good Coach bag anymore. They simply do not make them to the same standards that they used to. This isn't exactly the same thing. Omega isn't making these watches, Swatch is. But the cachet of the Omega brand will suffer because of this. And I shudder to think about what other collaborations might be lurking in our not so distant future. Look, you could have done this so much differently. And by differently, I mean better. Make a Swatch that looks exactly like these watches without the word Omega plastered all over the dial and the strap. Just Speedmaster. And it's not nearly as offensive. Then it becomes more of an homage to Omega, and the Speedmaster in particular, without confusing consumers and making them think that they're getting an affordable Omega. Because let's be honest, there shouldn't be an affordable Omega. This is the bane of Seiko and Grand Seiko. You can buy a quartz-powered Seiko for under $100 in a department store. You can buy a Grand Seiko in a boutique from anywhere from $3,000, $20,000, $30,000, or even more. Now you could buy a $6,000, $7,000 Omega, have someone ask you what kind of watch you're wearing, and you say, oh, an Omega Seamaster Planet Ocean, and then they say, oh, I have an Omega too, and they're wearing this damn MoonSwatch. It's just bad for the brand. Why do people want it? Sure, there were some legitimate enthusiasts who waited in line for their turn to buy this watch. But I assume that's because they either wanted to flip it, do a video about it, write about it, or both. But why do most people want this watch? Was it because they all have sentimental feelings about space exploration? No, I'm thinking not so much. Or was it because they all love Swatch, and when Swatch comes out with a new offering, they just have to have it? That doesn't sound right either. Or was it because they could get what appeared to be an affordable Omega? Especially to people who don't know anything about watches, it's an Omega. Says so on the dial, says so on the strap. Very prominently, they have an Omega. Some of the guys that I work with don't know that much about watches, but they knew about this release. Why? Because it's an Omega. If you're watching this, you probably know more about watches than 99% of the buying public. So yeah, you know it's a Swatch. But would your friends? Or your sister? Or your brother? This is dishonest branding and exploitation of a great brand. And I don't like it. Why isn't anybody else complaining about this? I have searched YouTube over to see if prominent people in the space like Jenny L and Teddy, Adrian from Bark and Jack, Federico, like or dislike this release, and I gotta say I'm a little disappointed. There are hundreds of people in the comment sections of their videos that see this the way that I do, but none of the actual content creators. I understand that this is an access-oriented space, and maybe some of them don't want to burn their relationship with Swatch to the ground for the sake of one video. Or maybe they really don't have a problem with this obscenity of a watch. But me? I don't have a relationship with the Swatch group. I'm small. No companies are sending me watches to review. So I guess I'm gonna ruin my relationship with the Swatch group before we ever get started, because I hate this watch, and no content is worth selling your soul over. I love my Omega Railmaster denim, and I have no intention of selling it. But as for purchasing future Omegas, I'm feeling a little less likely. I know that Omega really didn't have anything to do with this collaboration, because it doesn't feel like a collaboration. It feels like theft of intellectual property and design. Nevertheless, it's put a stain on the brand for me. I like quality. When I buy boots or shoes, I buy quality brands. I like quality watches, and I like the cachet that comes with quality. I don't buy brand names for the sake of name recognition. I don't want an Hermes bag, which everyone has heard of, because I don't associate that brand with quality worthy of the price. But I did buy a $250 Saddleback bag because I believed it would last me 50 years. But if Saddleback started making cheap plastic bags, it would bother me. This watch is crappy even by Swatch standards. Nevertheless, Omegas. I'm disappointed that it happened, and I'm a little bothered that the people that I look up to in this space seem so unbothered, even enthusiastic. It makes me trust them just a little bit less.